So Nigel Farage is about to speak at this historic moment. It is now 7 minutes to 11 when we are due to leave. Where are the BBC? What are they doing? Here they are, in parallel, Rita Chakrabarti. To 11 and the Brexit rally is in full swing. The BBC are doing, let's see what they're covering at the moment. Oh, spinning, yeah, oh, they're weaving something.
The majority of the 52% here who voted leave.
Oh yes, they're talking about the majority.
All in. Don't assume they crave a bygone age.
In low tones. Low tones. Oh yes, they're all oldies. All you oldies that voted Brexit.
Right, so what I do?
This is what they're up to at 10 minutes to go. 22:49.
Of more jobs for young people and more control.
And they're going on about all of this.
They're blaming all the old people. Yeah. Do you feel responsible? Do you feel responsible? Do you feel responsible? No.
Rita Chakrabarti is talking about blue passports and how they will be phased in over the next few months. What's Sophie talking about?
Tonight from Cambridge.
Oh look, going to Cambridge and showing the Remainers again, like they did a few minutes ago. Protests
departure of the United Kingdom from the EU.
Something truly remarkable is going to happen.
And now, for the first time this evening, they've actually gone over to Nigel Farage. Here he is.
That many thousands of you gave your time,
oh, no, they've interrupted it. Back to Sophie. But it just merely confirms what we all know, that the BBC has an inbuilt bias against anything to do with leaving the EU, and they will do everything they can right up to the very last minute of leaving, before we actually leave the EU, to make sure that people that are giving speeches at the rally aren't actually going to get any live coverage.
And we will never be silenced again.
Brexit rally.
There are so many amazing people who made this day
Brexit
happen.
rally is going full swing. Julie Hartley-Brewer has just spoken. BBC, the three people on the BBC screen, as you can see. At the same time that Julie Hartley-Brewer is speaking, we've just got this endless analysis from the three presenters, an economist, Anne McAvoy, whatever her name is. The three presenters gabbling away about endless analysis while Julie Hartley-Brewer is speaking. BBC isn't covering it. They did the same thing a few minutes ago, same tactics, when Anne Widdecombe was speaking. When Anne Widdecombe was speaking, what was the BBC doing? The BBC was basically just gabbling on about endless analysis about Brexit. Here they are again. Then for a little bit, now we've got Michelle Dewberry on, okay? Michelle Dewberry is about to speak at the live Brexit rally. I wonder if the BBC will cover it. No, instead they go to Edinburgh, you see? They're back in Edinburgh showing the EU flags again. While Michelle Dewberry is speaking, they are showing the EU flags up in Scotland. Now, I've just put in a complaint to the BBC about this by telephone, and I've said to them they are failing to give coverage of the Brexit rally in London. Here's the Brexit rally on YouTube, live and in parallel with the BBC, which is here. Here's the BBC coverage. EU flags flying in Edinburgh, and then the Three Stooges analysis, endless jolly japes analysis with the main two presenters that you can see. That's The Economist, and then the other two, you know, it's all jolly good stuff. While at the Brexit rally, Michelle Dewberry is speaking. Before Michelle Dewberry was speaking, it was Julie Hartley-Brewer. BBC didn't show any footage of that. Before Julie Hartley-Brewer, it was none other than Anne Widdecombe. The BBC didn't show any footage of that. All they showed was a little bit of flag waving and some singing. And that's all we've got so far from the BBC. Now, I've just put in a very strenuous complaint over the telephone about this poor coverage from the BBC. I want to see the speakers at this rally. I don't want to see some dried up old economist babbling on about the EU, okay? I don't want to see that. I want to see this rally, this Brexit night rally, okay? And the BBC, as per usual, is not covering it. That's what you pay your licence fee for, folks. Your licence fee. They are failing in their duty to the public. Now, here we are, Michelle Dewberry, she's still speaking live on YouTube and live on the BBC. Let's go back to the BBC, the two presenters again. And now they're going to, where are they going to now? Strabane, somewhere up in, I don't know where that is in the EU. Some lady there talking about the border, right? Live on the BBC, live in London at the Brexit rally on the night that we leave the EU. No coverage whatsoever from the BBC. This is live YouTube, and this is live BBC. Okay, no doubt babbling on about the loss of free movement and all the rest of it. I don't know. There we go. Now I've just put in my complaint, and I told the young lady that answered the phone that I was very annoyed. I just renewed my licence, and I'm sick and tired of paying the BBC for their one-sided anti-Brexit bias.
2 million people from the EU came and lived and stayed in this country whether we wanted them or not.
Okay, we've got Peter Bone now, MP, speaking live at the Brexit rally, and the BBC coverage is not living up to its expectations.
But tonight,
the BBC is not covering the speeches in the Brexit rally whatsoever. Every time there's a speech, the BBC is doing something else. Let's pan up and see what the BBC are doing. So we pan up and we'll zoom in, and you can see that they're talking about the border in a European state, somewhere, a place called Strabane. Okay, and just earlier, before that, they had their three presenters with their endless analysis. Every time that someone gives a speech at the Brexit rally, this time I believe it's Peter Bone, every time that happens, the BBC doesn't cover it. So let's just go back again just to show you, zoom in. There are the two presenters rabbiting away, all jolly japing stuff, isn't it? Rabbiting away whilst missing the opportunity to cover all of the speeches at the Brexit rally. Let's go back to the Brexit rally. Peter Bone still speaking. So now I'm going to make my complaint to the BBC.
Welcome to BBC Audience Services, where you can provide feedback or get help and information relating to BBC programmes and services. To leave your complaint via our automated service, press 1, or to speak to one of our advisors, press 2.
Okay, I'll speak to one of their advisors. Peter Bone's still speaking, by the way.
We're putting you through to the next available advisor. All calls are recorded and monitored.
BBC audience complaints, Andrew speaking. How can I help?
Oh, good evening. Yes, I'd like to make a complaint about the failure of the BBC coverage of the Leave the EU Brexit rally
Yeah.
that's going on at the moment.
Yes. What is the complaint, now, sir?
Are you making notes? Because I need this to go through to the powers that be.
Well, I do make notes, sir. That's the role of my job. I have the point that you made about the rally going on at the moment, and you have a complaint about our coverage of it.
Yes, I do indeed. In fact, every time that someone speaks and makes a speech at that rally, we've had 3 so far, Anne Widdecombe and the BBC didn't cover it. They just had their endless analysis of their 3 presenters or 2 presenters.
Yeah.
So that opportunity was missed. We then had Julie Hartley-Brewer, and the BBC then panned away for endless analysis, didn't show any of Julie Hartley-Brewer. Then they had, I believe, Peter Bone MP, who's now speaking, right? Again, no coverage from the BBC. The only time that the BBC went to the rally was when, in between 2 of those speeches, when they were just waving flags and there was a little bit of music playing. As soon as anybody gives a speech, it's back to their 2 presenters, which we've got on the screen now. And now, of course, they're doing breaking news about the Trump impeachment. Now, I pay my licence. I've just renewed my licence, and I'm very, very annoyed at the failure of the BBC to adequately cover this historic night of leaving the EU. And I want that complaint to go through to the top brass, because if this kind of thing goes on, I'm not going to pay my licence anymore. All right? I phoned you once this evening and nothing's changed. And now I'm phoning you again.
Yeah.
Right? Did you get all that, sir?
Yes, I have indeed. So I'll get that put across regarding our coverage of the rally this evening. As you said,
Absolutely abysmal.
People making speeches. Just confirm our Anne Widdecombe, Julia Hartley-Brewer,
And Peter Bone MP, all of those 3, and Richard Tice speaking. Nigel Farage will be speaking soon, I assume. It's live. I'm covering it live on YouTube, and I'm comparing it in a video live in parallel with what you are showing on the BBC. And I'm going to do an analysis of that, and that will form the basis of my extensive complaint to the BBC.
Well, what happens with this complaint is we put it onto an anonymous feedback report, so it's sent across to them. And by all means, if you do write in, you can receive a written response to your complaint. stand to say like this one, I'll get this.
Okay, don't worry, I'll be following it up with a written response as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Thanks for taking the time. Bye-bye.
You're very welcome. Bye.
Okay, I've just made my complaint to the BBC about the failures of their live coverage of the Brexit Leave Means Leave rally in London. It's going on live at the moment. We've only got a few minutes left before we are supposed to be leaving the EU. And the BBC, in my opinion, clearly is failing to cover this rally in the form of the speeches that have been made. We've had so far 3 speeches which the BBC failed to cover. Anne Widdecombe, Julie Hartley-Brewer, Richard Tice and Peter Bone MP. So every time that they had an opportunity to cover those speeches, the BBC was doing something else, either with their 2 or 3 presenters or some kind of side issue thingy. So here we're into, let me see now, the last, how many minutes have we got to go? It is 10 to 11 and the Brexit rally is in full swing. The BBC are doing, let's see what they're covering at the moment. Oh, spinning, yeah, oh they're weaving something. Yes, I've got the sound down. They're interviewing someone about yarns and weaving. Whether that's got anything to do with how Brexit will affect them or not, I don't know, because I've got the sound down. Let's just turn the sound up.
The clear majority of the 52% here who voted leave.
Oh yes, they're talking about the majority.
Are at the age of 65.
All
But
in.
don't assume they crave a bygone age.
In low tones. Low tones. Oh yes, they're all oldies. All you oldies that voted Brexit.
Right, so what I do?
This is what they're up to at 10 minutes to go. 22:49.
Of more jobs for young people and more control.
And they're going on about
As for Remainers,
all of this.
they're blaming all the old people. Yeah. Do you feel responsible?
No.
Every time that, you know, someone does a speech at the Brexit rally, BBC are doing something else. As I say to you, we've just had 3 missed opportunities to do speeches. Every time we've had one with Julie Hartley-Brewer or Anne Widdecombe or Peter Bone MP, they're doing, the BBC in parallel are doing something else. This time they're talking about some form of analysis, all sort of hand-wringing stuff, isn't it, from the BBC? All with these hushed tones, oh dear, you know, you've all made a terrible mistake, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, right? And that's what you get from the BBC. Now, if you've seen my other video, you'll see that I've put in a complaint, and a very strenuous complaint, about this, but it just merely confirms what we all know, that the BBC has an inbuilt bias against anything to do with leaving the EU, and they will do everything they can right up to the very last minute of leaving, before we actually leave the EU, to make sure that people that are giving speeches at the rally aren't actually going to get any live coverage. Of course you can go and see it live on YouTube. I'm on the Leave Means Leave rally YouTube coverage, but the point that I'm trying to make is that we want to see this on our national broadcaster, which I pay my money for. I pay money, you pay money, and all we're getting is a never-ending failure from the BBC. And now we're back to Sophie, get her surname. What's Sophie talking about?
Tonight from Cambridge.
Oh look, going to Cambridge and showing the Remainers again, like they did a few minutes ago.
Protest at the
Protests.
departure of the United Kingdom from the EU. 7 minutes and 45
Showing the Remainers.
Well,
Meanwhile,
been sending in your questions, asking
Nigel
how
Farage
from the EU will affect your lives. Rita
is
Brock
talking.
here now with some of the answers. Rita.
Nigel
Sophie,
Farage
let's
is
start.
talking at the speech, at the rally.
Some exciting times and 1 or 2 challenges.
No, it's not Nigel Farage, I beg your pardon. It sounds like Richard Tice.
Nigel, as we all know it. And without Nigel, there would have been no Brexit party. He's here now,
Here he comes.
with us.
What are the BBC
Give him a
doing in
massive,
real time? Don't
massive
forget this is
welcome.
parallel,
He's
folks.
a little bit shy sometimes, you know.
We've got Rita Chakrabarti talking about the transition period.
I can't hear you. Do we want Nigel?
Rita Chakrabarti,
Here he is, the
and
one
here's
and only,
Nigel Farage.
Mr. Nigel
Where are the BBC?
Farage.
So Nigel Farage is about to speak at this historic moment. It is now 7 minutes to 11 when we are due to leave. Where are the BBC? What are they doing? Here they are, in parallel, Rita Chakrabarti. Rita Chakrabarti is talking about blue passports and how they will be phased in over the next few months. This is in parallel, live on the BBC at 5 minutes to 11, okay, almost. 5 minutes to 11, and the BBC still refusing to show the main speakers at the Brexit rally in London. And here's Nigel Farage now. I believe he's about to make his speech.
It's time. Something truly remarkable is going to happen.
And now, for the first time this evening,
Something
they've
that I've
actually
fought
gone
for
over to Nigel
27 years.
Farage. Here he is.
Something that many thousands of you gave your time.
Oh,
love,
no,
and
they've
money
interrupted
for.
it. Back to Sophie.
We face an establishment that never
Back to Sophie.
even
Nigel's
wanted
still
to listen
talking.
us. An establishment that never
Don't forget
wanted
this is in
that
parallel and in
referendum
real
to take
time.
place. An establishment that has tried for 3.5 years
And what
to
will BBC
frustrate the
doing?
will of the greatest democratic mandate ever.
They're talking about the
seen
history
in this
of the
country.
common market and all the rest of it back in the 1970s.
It's their season
Anything
time.
they can do not to cover Nigel Farage.
We will leave the European Union!
So Nigel Farage is now speaking live.
We did it!
BBC. Here we are, a young
Transformed the landscape of our
Margaret
country.
Thatcher.
And there are some that say we shouldn't celebrate tonight.
That's what the BBC are doing, and this is what's happening live in
Well, we
London.
are going to celebrate tonight, and we are celebrating tonight because we
I've just
know
put my complaint in for the second time to the
the
BBC,
single
complaining
most
about their
important
terrible
moment
coverage
in
of
the
this
modern
event.
history of
It will form the
our
basis of
great
an
nation.
extensive
That is what
complaint
is happening
in writing
tonight.
to the BBC. I've just
And I
paid my
think there's a
licence
lot to
fee to the
celebrate, don't
BBC.
you?
Meanwhile,
The first thing to celebrate
we are
is
now
that we will no longer have to listen
to Mr. 12:56, 22:56,
to
coming
Mr.
up to 11
Guy
p.m.
Verhofstadt.
Nigel's talking
No
away.
longer
What
will
are the
our Prime
BBC
Minister
doing?
be talked down to by
They're showing
unrealistic bureaucrats in Brussels.
more EU flags.
We should celebrate the fact
They're not talking about Nigel, are they?
people across the road
Scenes
here
of the MPs. We've seen all this before. We want to see what's going on at the Brexit rally, don't we?
can hold directly
Yes,
accountable
this is what's going on at the
general
Brexit rally.
elections. We become a democratic, self-governing, independent, and I hope
22:56.
proud nation.
4 minutes to go. Nigel's talking away. Now let's see what the BBC are
And we
doing.
should celebrate.
In real time, Sophie with Laura Kunsberg and the other lady correspondent over in the EU. Let's see what they're saying.
The mood tonight in Brussels. Well, here in the European quarter
The mood tonight
of
in
Brussels,
Brussels.
it's always quite quiet at night.
They're talking about the mood tonight in Brussels, and Nigel is talking about the mood tonight at the same
We
time
once again will be able
in
to
London.
find our place in the world. We are able
And they're going on about the EU again.
with America.
in Brussels. The mourners of Brexit, they're talking about waving the European flags.
Actually quite a quiet night here. This is a night that the European Union had hoped that they would never see. Right up until very
all negative stuff again from the BBC.
That maybe Brexit could be avoided.
Maybe Brexit could be avoided. This is the live coverage of the BBC at about 2 minutes to 11.
And Laura Koonsberg in
Koonsberg now.
talking earlier on about the fact that it is a rather low-key run-up.
Meanwhile,
Imminent departure. They give us a sense of the magnitude of what is it.
The only reason we're here tonight.
meanwhile, Nigel's talking away. Nigel's talking away, giving his speech at 1 minute to 11. And who we got on the BBC? We've got Laura Koonsberg. Endless analysis. Don't show Nigel, don't show Nigel, don't show Nigel. Don't show Nigel.
For the first time in history, the people have beaten the establishment, and that
This is an historic occasion, an historic moment. And oh, now look, the BBC are showing the clock. They're showing the clock. They're showing the clock on Downing Street. I don't want to see the clock on Downing Street. This is about the dozenth time they showed the clock on Downing Street. I want to see Nigel Farage.
set an example for our friends right across the continent.
I want to see Nigel Farage speaking at about 27 seconds to go. What are the BBC saying?
We'll work with them. We'll
There
cooperate
are
with them.
thousands of people waiting around the corner in Parliament Square, waiting to celebrate that moment. For very many people, though, a very different atmosphere tonight.
There you go, they're not
Let's
showing
leave
it.
Now, 10 seconds to go.
They're not showing it. They're still not showing it. They're still not showing it.
We'll have reciprocity, but we will not take orders from them.
Right, not showing Nigel, showing the clock. BBC up top.
Come on, I'm shy.
Brexit rally down below.
I'm shy, but thank you.
This is on YouTube.
So we've got a lot to celebrate.
And what are the BBC doing?
Now I know there are big battles to come. I know there are people here concerned what happens.
The BBC are showing Big Ben and a montage with flashing lights. Right, and Nigel was giving his speech.
Concerned about whether we could be betrayed again. But remember this. Remember this. What happens now?
We're now going to Parliament Square.
Tonight, that has not been the case here. All evening, speeches
Okay.
from leading Brexiteers, singing, chanting.
Now they're showing it,
God save
finally.
the Queen, Rule Britannia, and then in the
They're
final
showing it
moments,
begrudgingly, like the BBC do. Begrudgingly. Let's show a little bit of it just so we can keep the peace with the people. So that we can't be criticised of our failures as a broadcaster.
This wasn't to be celebrated. He said it was. It was a victory, he said, for democracy. He said we beat the establishment who didn't want the referendum. They didn't want this to happen. But he also said that this wasn't the end, that there would be battles ahead, and he would be standing by to make sure that Boris Johnson did deliver. When it comes to things like fishing, when it comes to making sure that the European Court of Justice doesn't have a role, he says he will be keeping an eye on what goes on in the next year. And absolutely huge cheers here as that moment came. Well, we'll leave the celebrations there in Parliament Square.
We'll leave the celebrations there in Parliament Square and back home to the Emma Vardy down at the border between the back over in Ireland. There you go. Right. Right, so they're going to end up going all through that again to try to like take your attention away from what's going on in London. Unbelievable stuff.